Call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Belsley.
Here.
Blunier. Hare.
Here.
Lehman. Newman.
Here.
Parrott.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's no public hearings. Does anybody have, from the audience, public comment? If not, I just have one. This past week, I had the opportunity to attend the Morton Junior High School's Disney Beauty and the Beast play, and it was phenomenal what those 7th and 8th grade kids do. We talk about our basketball teams, our baseball teams, sporting events, but these are 7th and 8th grade kids that it was a sold-out crowd 3 nights in a row, and the talent there was unbelievable. I know one parent didn't even know their child could sing till a year ago, and it was really, my wife thought the one should have been a voiceover, but she was actually doing the singing. It was that good. So it was just a lot of talent there. And at break time, we happened to be standing there, and the 2 young gentlemen that played the Beast, Jackson Weber, and Gaston, Jared Taylor, they happened to be standing maybe 10 feet from me, and I was just watching them. And I was admiring being a guy in 7th grade, 8th grade doing that. So I introduced myself. I'm Jeff Kaufman, and I just happen to be the mayor of Morton. But I says, I can't imagine getting on a stage at your age doing what you did when I, as a freshman in high school, froze and couldn't even do a book report. Well, their eyes, you imagine, got about that big. And what I took from it was I'm encouraged with our youth what they are going to accomplish. No matter what they go into, these parents are really raising some kids. We have some real talent there that you can get up on a stage, sing, dance. It was amazing. And I would highly recommend anybody going to next year's play because it was good. My granddaughter, I would never have thought would have got into a play, and she's kind of bashful like her grandpa, and she was up there, so. I know you find that hard to believe, Sam, but that's the truth. So, on that note, I encourage everybody to meet the junior high play, and I'm sure if you want to donate some money and funds to help that, they would appreciate that. So, on that note, I'm sure they'll have a good one next year. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. And tonight, the consent agenda is approval of the minutes, the regular meeting of January 15th, 2018, and the approval of the bills. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Any questions, comments? Call the roll.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Parrott.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Tonight, I have before you appointment of Mr. Ken Helmuth to the Morton Police and Fire Commission for a 3-year term. He lives here in Morton for 30-plus years. He has 2 children, adult children. He was employed by Caterpillar as an attorney specializing in employment law and commercial transactions, immigration law, and he's been retired for 5 years, and he's worked on Berean Ministries, as you can see, Faith, Hope, and Love, been involved. And the nice thing, when I called him and asked him to serve, he said he'd been looking for an opportunity, and it's so nice to get people to encourage that want to serve and help us out. So I really appreciate that from all citizens to take a turn. So he's looking forward to it. The Police and Fire Commission, the chief could explain more, but they interview the new police officers, rank them. It's an important job. So in saying that, I would ask for a motion to approve. Randy?
Second.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Hare.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Parrott.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And thanks to Ken for willing to serve. The other second item is the number of liquor license and the number of Class B3 liquor licensing increased from 3 to 4. And this is the Wine and Whiskey Bar at the last space in the Jefferson Building, and they have to have a full license because of the whiskey. So I would ask for a motion, please.
Move to approve.
Second. Any questions? If not, call the roll.
Lehman.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Parrot.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. The third item you have, I left a copy at each desk, was the resignation of Laura Elam from the Planning and Zoning, from the Planning Commission, and effective February 2nd. And at the next board meeting, I have a gentleman that is willing to serve, and he too had a nice comment of willing to serve, a young architect in town. So I'll have that at the next board meeting. But thanks to Laura for her 10 years of service. That's all I have. Village Clerk,
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Village Administrator, Chief of Police.
I have a few things tonight, Your Honor. First, in your packet, you'll see the squad car mileage that was incurred by the police department for year 2017. Has all the vehicles here, as well as a couple of vehicles that we had previously traded off that aren't listed in our present fleet, but their mileage is calculated in on the total mileage. I also have denoted one of the vehicles on here that we plan on getting rid of this year when we were order two more vehicles. One is a 1984 Chevy van that we've used for animal control over the last 30-some years. And second is a 2009 Chevy Impala. What our intentions are with that vehicle is to give that to the fire department. They're presently driving a 2004 Impala that formerly belonged to the police fleet, and then get rid of it. The city mechanic has commented that he believes that it's lived its life expectancy well beyond, so that's our intentions on those vehicles. I had on the agenda placed for the purchase of two new police vehicles. However, we're still waiting for Ford to come through with the state bid on that. We received information today that it may be 2 to 4 weeks so before that information is done. So I may see it on the agenda for the next meeting as well, so that I can bring it up if we do get the information in time. Those are both information for you. The third item that I actually have is something that I would be seeking a motion by the board to approve and then a vote on that. What that is, it's an intergovernmental agreement for our consolidated PSAP, Public Safety Answering Points, which is something that we voted on last summer to approve. What we are looking at right now is started to get some startup funds for that. We're hired a consultant to assist with the hiring of the dispatchers, as well as the hiring process with the director. So we're looking at all the signatories to chip in $25,000 to get this fund started. As we proceed with the budgetary items for this, that $25,000 that we front will come off of the budgetary, so we'll get credit for that $25,000 that we're putting up front, but we need to get the boat floating so that we can get started with the process of hiring a director. And as I said, that we have already looked at starting to hire the director with a consultant. The ETSB has approved it on their end. The county board approved this on their end on the 31st. So some of the other municipalities, Washington has already approved this. So all the signatories that are doing this are planning on doing that. Julie, our village administrator, had previously put into the budget $200,000 that we would have for this year in the event any expenditures. So this is already in the budget. It's not anything extra that we would need to add to that. So I would entertain any other questions from the board regarding
Do we have a
that.
motion?
Move to approve the intergovernmental agreement.
Second.
First and second. Okay, it looks like Pekin, Washington, East Peoria, and ourselves what I'll be putting into that kitty?
The county board, sheriff's department,
Okay.
the ETSB, there's 7 signatories on that intergovernment agreement. So I may have
Washington as well.
Washington as well, yes.
Any other comments?
This is just by the very nature of who's participating here, this is really, just like it says startup, so it's legal or administrative fees. It's nothing that's going to be going towards any further steps with the building improvements or anything like that.
No, it has nothing to do with that. It's all monies that otherwise would be budgeted. We have a meeting, the governance board, on the 16th, where we plan on hopefully finalizing a budget that all municipalities, all the bodies will be getting an invoice for to contribute for their monies. And from that, any of the startup funding would be deducted from that. So it's not any extra, it's just to get things started so that we can move forward.
Any other questions? If not, call the roll.
Newman.
Yes.
Parrot.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Corporation Counsel
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
and Director of Fire and Emergency Services
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
and Director of Public Works.
One item tonight, Your Honor. In front of you is Ordinance 17-34. This is an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 24 of the Morton Municipal Code to provide minimum insurance standards for village contractors.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, any comments? You wanna,
This is something that Pat and I have worked on for actually quite some time, but we want to kind of get it in before construction season starts. This kind of just cleans up any question. So with this, we've got an example insurance sheet for contractors just to simplify it for everybody. So just kind of cleans it up.
Seems to have a good line of sight too, with clarity on subcontractors and the liability and responsibility that lies with the
Yep.
contractor with Morton.
Yes, and then one other thing, we did work with Cool and Pat to come up with all these. So our insurance worked with us on this. So with that, I'd like your approval.
Just a question. So this is for contractors that are doing work for the village that aren't under a, I guess, a formal contract where insurance would normally be specified in the contract, right?
Yes, yes. But like for most of our contracts for road work, whatever, it would match this also.
Okay, so it does match pretty much what we
Yeah,
would
but any
require.
contractors that we might hire, for some of that smaller work that's not bid out, we would utilize this.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
any other comments? Call the roll, please.
Parrot.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Officer.
Several items tonight, Your Honor. The first being ordinance 17-36, amending a tract of land for Oak Lawn Mobile Estates. And if you would look in your packet, it's labeled as Exhibit 8. It's a plat of Oak Lawn. And this parcel is on that L-shaped piece that contains a barn that fronts Jefferson Street. It's north of that and on the in the northwest corner, abutting the existing mobile home park. It's not quite an acre, 0.97 acres of ground that contains some structures that are used by Oak Lawn. So this is kind of part of the sale of that property. Is to include, the intention is to include it as part of that sale when they close on that ground. And that was at the Plan Commission 2 weeks ago, and they had a favorable recommendation to approve this.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? Call the roll.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Parrot.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The second item tonight is 17-37 regarding murals. The Plan Commission discussed this at 2 separate meetings. And basically, what they've come back to the board with was a no recommendation. They would not approve the ordinance as petitioned here. And I think Pat can put some clarity into it in terms of the legal aspect, in terms of what kind of questions we can ask if someone were to come in to want to do a mural, which is why everyone was apprehensive to allow this to be adopted.
Yeah, the Plan Commission had substantial discussions regarding the ordinance, and ultimately, kind of my synopsis of their resolution was that we don't have substantial demand from interested parties wishing to construct or to put a mural in Morton. There was probably one request, and the concern was content-specific regulation and the First Amendment implications of making sure our ordinance both meets First Amendment, but also meets with what the Plan Commission expected. And basically, you can't regulate the content of art except in a content-neutral fashion. And I think the Plan Commission's concern was with the possibilities that would be opened up if murals were permitted without regulation of content. So they would be more comfortable with the concept of murals if they were able to regulate content. They can't regulate content, so they're not comfortable just opening the door up for murals. So we don't often have these come back from the Plan Commission with a negative recommendation, so they voted on it and said their recommendation is that this not be passed. Since there is an ordinance number to it, and since we did have a public hearing to kind of conclude the process through, and this may sound funny, but my suggestion would be we have a motion and second to approve, and if you want to carry through with the Plan Commission's recommendation, you would each vote no on the ordinance. But by making a motion and a second to approve the ordinance, you each get a vote yes or no as if you're approving the ordinance. If you have the motion to not approve it, then you end up voting the opposite. So my recommendation is that you, somebody make a motion and a second to approve it, and if you are in agreement with the Plan Commission, vote no.
Do we have a motion
So moved.
for approval?
Yes, sure.
I'll second it.
And second.
Then I've got a question.
Okay.
We didn't get to that point. So did someone bring to the Plan Commission an idea for a mural, or like what is the reasoning for
Well, it actually came by way of the Chamber EDC. Someone had contacted Leanne, who contacted me,
Okay.
who then got a hold of Pat, and we went about creating an ordinance. And then we held the Plan Commission meeting the first time we spoke of it. They discussed it. I mean, it was pretty lengthy discussion that they had. And after they found out just what Pat explained to you, they were somewhat apprehensive about it, but we thought.
Was there a specific property that was in question then?
No, actually, it was the person that has that old school art business, I think, is who contacted Leanne.
Oh, okay.
And I have since talked to him. He called, and I told him kind of where we were at with this, and he was okay with that. He said he may even do some legwork and see like some other places where
There's
they
some I was just
currently
gonna
have
say,
them.
if you've been into down the warehouse district in Peoria
Yeah.
and seen some of the murals that were done there, they're pretty awesome. Part of that was born out of a different problem though, which was graffiti.
Right.
Which we really don't necessarily have that, but yeah, but it's pretty interesting, and it livens up the area, and it's really a cool opportunity. So,
I know I talked to Steve this afternoon on the phone, and he mentioned Beacon has a number of them,
Mhm.
and they're kind of a neat
yeah.
thing to have. And so if we can figure that out, we can come back to you with something at that time.
Pontiac has a lot.
Oh,
They have a lot of them up there.
Canton has history pictures on the wall
Yeah, there's some different.
with lighting, which is cool.
Yeah.
I was just in Lincoln, and it was kind of cool to see they had a mural of a penny on the side, which obviously worked well with the town. So I mean, if there's a way that we can have somewhat of control, I think it'd definitely be a neat opportunity.
one of the things that, from my standpoint as having drafted the ordinance and certainly open to ways to do it differently, one of the things in a lot of communities is there's kind of a presumption of internal control. In other words, if I own a building, I'm not going to let someone paint something offensive on the side of my building. You're only allowed in a commercial district. Presumably, the business owner isn't going to want his business be adversely affected by a message that would offend public sensibilities. And the Planning Commission did have discussion on that concept. In other words, would it become self-policing if we permit it? Would the culture, would the necessities of how you could present this kind of police itself? And I think the Planning Commission became concerned with the possibility for the lack of public control over it, and they were concerned it may not police itself. So we can certainly revisit, what other communities have that was that informed the ordinance we prepared, but we can definitely take another look at it, and if find a way that the Planning Commission is satisfied with, we can definitely bring it back.
Yeah, I would guess that most communities don't have just an open ordinance, that it's probably based on some theme, or something like a historical theme, or something that they're trying to promote in the community. And I wonder if you can.
We do have a
write an
historic
ordinance around that.
committee that's going through town, putting plaques and different things, so if we could tie that in with a theme.
I see why this is a mess, because on one hand, we want control, but on the other hand, I'm totally against that, because if I own the building, and I'm gonna leave it up to, I have a better judge of what I'm gonna do with my building than you guys are. Right? I think that's a fair statement. So part of me is, I see why this is a mess, because, property rights are kind of a foundation of the country, really. But then we also don't want advertising, maybe per se, of painting or whatever that might be. So this one's a little. I'd like to, instead of just, in my opinion, this is what I would like to, instead of just striking it down, or I guess maybe just table it for a second. Think it through as far as giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down, because I think about it as it's interesting. I don't know. It's just my 2 cents. I don't want to suggest anybody else needs to follow that, but I don't know if I'm just want to do a thumbs up or thumbs down on a pad.
One suggestion is the Planning Commission had probably an hour of some of the most engaged discussion that you see at that level. And so I think they could be a valuable resource in helping us get an ordinance to you that might be consistent with your sensibilities. And so because the Planning Commission made a final recommendation on this ordinance as prepared, voting it down doesn't prohibit us from bringing something back to you, but I would suggest that we kind of tie the bow on what went to the Planning Commission, and then have some pre-hearing, not public hearing yet level discussions, but some discussions at the Planning Commission on how we might do this better, and then bring it back to you.
Any other comments? We'll take a roll call vote.
Okay, Hare. With the idea that we're coming back with something different, no.
Layman. I'm gonna second with Sam on exactly how he said that, so no at this time.
Newman.
No.
Parrott.
No.
Belsley.
No.
Motion does not pass.
The next item tonight is ordinance 17-38, an ordinance making amendments regarding solar energy systems to Chapter 4, Title 10 of the Morton Municipal Code. And Attorney McGrath will walk you through that.
This is probably a modernization of our code as it relates to solar energy systems. We have scant provisions presently in the code, and your planning and zoning officer deserves much credit for identifying an issue of planning and zoning concern at a kind of before we got hit with rush, and I think there is more to come on this. Roger raised the issue to me, and we've worked together on preparing an ordinance that's relatively consistent with the county's regulation, and that's intended to permit, in some instances, individuals to proceed with solar projects, while also being protective of the village's interest and the property owner's interest. The ordinance went to the Plan Commission for hearing and recommendation. They made an affirmative recommendation. Subsequent to the publication of the board packet and on additional review of the ordinance, there are a couple typographical improvements or issues which were noted, and I wanted to go through those changes which are recommended from my standpoint as Corporation Counsel, and I believe with the concurrence of your staff. I circulated a red line draft to you before the board meeting tonight, and Trustee Newman caught two other issues which are not reflected in that, so I'd like to go through and just call your attention to each of those changes. The first change is in paragraph C5, and that would be on the, pages aren't numbered, but it'd be on the 4th page of the ordinance. Excuse me, paragraph 5E. So paragraph 5 is a safety paragraph, and paragraph E on the 3rd line down, when speaking of the maintenance obligation for the solar energy systems, it says, or is no longer being utilized to perform its intended, and the word use is omitted, so it's intended use for 6 consecutive months. So that's a proposed addition between intended and for. We would add in the word use. It's correcting a typographical error. Down lower on that same page in paragraph 7, the last word on the 3rd line states unincorporated. It should be incorporated. It's a typographical error. The remainder of the changes are marked in red line font and highlighter on the draft I circulated on in paragraph F6, which is on the 6th page. There was a proposed setback of 500 feet from the nearest residence if a special use were to be granted for a large-scale or commercial solar farm. Upon further review of the properties within the village which may be well suited for this type of development, staff has recommended, and I concur, that we reduce that to 250 feet. The next proposed change is on the following page in paragraph 9. At the end of the second full line from the bottom of the paragraph, speaking of road use agreements, it talks about the development providing for road repair plan to address essentially issues that may be required. And the word village was omitted there. It should be required by the village or the developer. So that's a proposed change that's in front of you. Last proposed change that is in front of you is on second to last page of the ordinance, paragraph F10 B6. It's a sentence: financial provision shall not be so onerous as to make wind power projects unfeasible. Wind should have been solar, but as I spent additional time reviewing that language, I didn't think it substantively improved the ordinance. It was too subjective a term, so I proposed to strike that. So, with an ordinance of this scale and scope, and with the amount of interest in these types of development, I apologize that there are changes at the last minute. We try to iron those out in advance, but sometimes those things slip through, so I appreciate the board's review of the revisions and apologize that it wasn't reflected in the draft that went out with the board packets.
But in all due respect, we met with the staff today and went through some of that and those changes so we can get that approved for tonight. So, is there any motion?
I'll move to approve the ordinance.
Second.
Any comments, concerns?
I was going to ask, just for clarity, for homeowners that want to install their own meters, can they do that?
Yeah, the ordinance addresses all types of systems. There are a couple different systems that could be relevant to individual homeowners. Those would be building integrated systems like solar shingles. Those would be building mounted systems or ground mount systems. So there is a mechanism available. It does require a special use. At this point in time, the Plan Commission saw it's where that was appropriate, but there is a mechanism for individual homeowners or individual commercial property owners to seek approval for any of those, building integrated solar, building mounted solar, or ground mounted solar on their own property.
I just seen language referring to qualified solar installer, and I didn't know if on smaller units residential wise, if homeowners can do their own work with a permit, with a proper permit.
The qualified solar installer language, I
Pertains to
believe,
the commercial?
is included in particular reference to the commercial and large-scale solar.
They're probably wouldn't want to be a certified electrical contractor to get you hooked up into your system with the grid. That would be one thing with that, Randy. So a lot of the homeowners can do their own work, but they want a final sign off because to integrate it into the system is gonna, you might be able to mount it. What's that?
The electrical contractor would have to be
Yes, that's
certified.
What, yeah, you can't just, might be able to build it, but then to actually integrate it into your system where you're selling it back, or there's gonna have to be some type of sign off
I
there.
would support that. I actually was
Yeah.
just curious if this is maybe a loophole or something that falls
Right.
through the cracks where a homeowner has a good idea, but
Yeah.
not necessarily the right skill sets to do the work.
Well, good questions, all of them.
I have a comment on the ground mounted, you know, it talks about being accessory use, but down in the height, it talks about the 20 feet being the max height, whereas in the ordinances it stands now, accessory structures have to be, what was it, 13 feet,
13 feet
or
or height.
the height of the primary structure, or whichever is less. And I have a little concern about that height being in two, from the amount of space that those cover. The way I'm reading it now, that it could kind of cover the whole backyard, or I guess I would like to see maybe more of the accessory structure rules apply to this. So if it's, you know, the 1.6% of your, I think the whole total yard can be used as an accessory structure. And if it would apply to this, is I'm looking at if somebody wanted to put, you know, solar panels across their entire backyard, the ground mounted system across their entire backyard at 20 feet high, is that something we want? I'm not sure that would be something I would
I
want in my
wouldn't want
backyard.
that.
The square footage requirements, in my opinion, the way the ordinance is prepared, there isn't any exception to the ordinary limitation on how much of the property can be covered by an accessory use. So I think the ordinary percentage of the lot limitation would apply to a ground
Okay.
or pole-mounted solar system. In terms of the 20-foot height, I think your point is well taken, and that could be amended to provide it shall not exceed the maximum height permitted for an accessory structure in that zoning district.
It would seem more consistent that way.
Sure.
If all the accessory rules apply, then I'd be much more.
Is this something we're really gonna see in people's backyards? I didn't envision that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the solar panels are coming. I
They're
mean,
I know people already have them.
the shingles themselves will have, be on windows. It'll be every the next 10 years, the acceleration of that technology is gonna be mind-blowing.
We had contractors attend our public hearings who have immediate interest on their commercial buildings, and they were, I think, interested in roof-mounted systems, but
It's something the village should actually be looking at in itself, to be mounting solar panels to any buildings that we have, because the requirement for the bigger and larger companies to actually invest into renewable energy, prices are very high, so the payoff is only 3 or 4 years. So that would be something that the village itself, any type of the rooftop, that we should be actually looking into as well. I mean, it's something that's a good fit, and it's just I'm glad you guys are doing this, because it's coming fast.
So do you have that in there, the amended we would make an amended motion
yeah, I
that
would,
the accessory structures would be, as Mr. Parrott requested.
yeah, I am marking that change now, and I'll read it off
Okay.
so the board knows.
Any other changes we'd like? I just think we need to get something on the map here
Absolutely.
for everybody coming. And certainly, this might be a learning curve, and we may have to address it, but thank you, Mr. Parrott. That is definitely something I don't want in my neighbor's backyard, 20-foot structures. So thank you.
So the change which trustee Parrott proposed to paragraph C1B on page 3, the way I would intend to reword paragraph B is that ground or pole-mounted solar energy system shall not exceed the maximum permitted height for an accessory structure when orientated at maximum tilt. And that way we're cross-referencing to other regulations in the code and have consistency across.
You understand that, Roger, since you're going to enforce
Got
it? Okay. In case you want something else in there. Any other comments?
I do have one more comment, and it's just something I was glad to see in here, the decommissioning of the larger solar farm. It's been in the area, there's been several talks about these going in the area. It's always been a concern of mine is if the company comes in, puts these in, and then goes, default, then what happens with all the infrastructure they put in? And I think having the way this is, the bonding that goes into, having before construction starts to put in place a system for decommissioning if everybody disappears, we still have a way to take care of that. I appreciate that.
You and Roger are both comfortable with that language?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments? Appreciate the comments, very good. If not, let's have a roll call.
We need an amended motion.
Yes.
Concurrence of the movement and the person seconded to the amendment made during discussion.
Ken had first.
I would concur with the amendment to the
Ms.
ordinance.
Yes.
Okay. So both first and second agree to the amended motion. Call the roll.
Hare,
Yes.
Lehman,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Roger, you got anything easy tonight?
2 more. They're easy, though. The next item is a preliminary and a final plat of the Sarah Grimm subdivision. And this was formerly 320 South Main. And what's being done with this plat is taking that building and the adjacent parking lot and creating 3 parcels. There's Lot 1, which is the 320 South Main. Then the line that separates that Sucre, the candy ice cream shop on First Street at 321 is Lot 2, plus a part of the parking lot, and that's that line that you see running through the parking lot from east to west. And then Lot 3 is the parking lot itself. So that each of these businesses have the required parking spaces necessary.
And Lot 3 is that area that runs along the
The
plaza.
plaza, correct.
And that Lot 3 would be required to be left for both Lot 1 and Lot 2 for parking. So Lot 3 cannot be built on, correct, Roger?
Right, correct. And that was, the Plan Commission approved this preliminary and final plat as you see it.
And to supplement, the developer did provide us copies of the documentation that addresses the use of Lot 3 for parking. I reviewed that and found it to be satisfactorily prepared for the village's concern.
Because in this scenario, they are required to have so much parking.
It's a little unorthodox in appearance, but I think it's a good thing from a housekeeping matter to address this. Some of you on the board may recall, this was part of the discussion too with the plaza development, and there was some question at that time and just the ambiguity associated with. So yeah, I think it's a good thing we're clearing it up. The good thing I think also that'll come from this is Lot 3. It'll allow for the creation of a tax ID number, which it never formally had that before, for tax purposes on that. And so that's a good thing as well. And then, as the mayor has mentioned, it'll assure that there's clear access to the neighboring property, as well as allow for the parking on that property as well. So it's all good for several reasons, I think, and will be a good thing to have in place and on the books.
And it's fair, and it does give redevelopment down there in the older buildings. So could we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
First and second, any other discussion? If not, call the roll.
Lehman,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Parrot,
Yes.
Belsley,
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mr. Spangler.
Okay, and the last item I have is the preliminary and final plat of the Corey subdivision. This property is located on Tennessee, just before you get to the overpass to go over Interstate 74, across to the east of the soccer fields. And the Corey zone, I'm thinking approximately 35 acres there. Currently have a house behind this lot that you see on the plat, and they wish to, I think their son is going to at some point build a house there on that new lot.
So do I have a motion?
Ingress and egress is all accounted for. Everything's good.
We have a first,
Ken did.
you're second it? Okay, first and second. Any other comment? Call the roll.
Newman.
Yes.
Parrot.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Village trustees, anybody got anything tonight? Anything tonight? Okay, we do need to go to closed session.
Closed session tonight under 5 ILCS 120/2C2 to discuss collective negotiating matters between the village and its employees or their representatives.
Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Parrot.
Yes.
Belsley. Yes. Hare.
Yes.
Lehman.
Yes.
Newman.
Yes.
Thank you. There will be no action tonight, and I do ask the administrator to stay.